Warning, the following contains graphic depictions of violence and gore. Viewer discretion is advised.
Hi my friends, and welcome to the land of the rising manga that is the Exit Zone. We've reached the end of the first major story arc of Higurashi no Nakoroni. And in case you didn't see that little warning at the beginning of this video, this is about to happen.
Funny thing though is that I'm usually not a fan of graphic violence and gore, as all too often I think it gets in the way of good storytelling. Yet this series remains one of my all-time favorites because of how well told the story is, in my opinion. To me, what puts Higurashi above all of those other schlock titles is how it utilizes its darker elements in meaningful ways, most notably when they execute some brilliant twists later. I won't spoil them just yet, but let's just say those twists really help to put things into perspective. It also helps that there's actual build up to these events as opposed to them just being there for pure shock value. We know something bad is going to happen by the end of this volume, and the only question now is how far down the rabbit hole are we going to fall.
Well, let's take a look at the final two chapters of the Abducted by Demon arc to find out.
We open up with Keiichi providing a recap of the events of the first half of the manga for those who skipped my previous videos.
You know who you are!
On his way home, he hears footsteps and yet doesn't see anyone following him, and yet those same footsteps persist even after he gets home, leading him to think,
did you ever have the feeling you was being watched?
Feeling a little uneasy, Keiichi decides to pull his best Naruto impersonation and destroys a nearby shoe cabinet.
Well, I think we all know how Keiichi's mom is going to react to this. Now Keiichi, stop being so rough with the shoe cabinet. Keep this up and we'll have to consider sending you to one of those psychiatrists you've heard so much about.
Actually, I think Keiichi wishes his mom was around to scold him after he gets a call from her saying that she and his father have urgent business to attend to in Tokyo and wouldn't be home for the night. I'm guessing comic market.
Well, look on the bright side, Keiichi. You might be home alone with a couple of ass-crazy stalker bitches, but you might get some nice macro soji when your parents get back. And you're still alive.
Anyway, as he's getting ready for a long night, Keiichi gets another call, this time from Oishi. Keiichi informs him about the Ohagi incident, to which Oishi points out that they could use the needle as evidence.
Well, I'm sure Keiichi would have known something that obvious and saved it, or he could have carelessly lost it after his little freakout. Oops.
Yeah, this arc doesn't really paint Keiichi as the smartest protagonist, as he also tells Oishi about how he was almost run over by a van, and realizes he never got the license plate of it. It says something when even L from Death Note has better survival instincts than this guy. Anyway, he ends up putting Oishi on hold after someone starts ringing the doorbell excessively. Because yeah, it's real smart to open the door to someone who really wants into your house while you're possibly being stopped. Yeah, it's Brenna.
Keiichi, if we're ever in a slasher film scenario, I'm voting you be the first victim.
Okay, to Keiichi's credit, he does keep the chain lock on the door, but Rena still tries to persuade her way in, even offering to cook him dinner that she just so happened to bring for him.
No, Keiichi, don't fall for it! It's just an ultra cute anime girl offering to cook you dinner while your parents are out and... You know what, maybe we should consider the pros and cons of this scenario.
I mean, come on, maybe it's just a coincidence that she's stopping by on a night when your parents are out. It's not as though she's doing anything the least bit threatening, like making as scary as all hell face. Never mind, close the door on the bitch. Yeah, somehow Rena knew his parents were out, and even what kind of ramen he was going to eat as his dinner because she had seen him and his mother purchase it from the store while she was following them. Okay, so obviously this whole situation causes Keiichi to go into a blind panic and shut the door on Rena's hands. He's in so much of a panic that a couple of pages even end up out of order.
Yeah, in the original sound novel, Keiichi only slammed the door on Rena's fingers once and then held on until she managed to slip her fingers out.
Here, it looks like Keiichi slammed the door once, let go, and then slammed the door again on her fingers. Now, I could be wrong, and maybe Suzuragi was doing her own interpretation of these events, but the timing still feels really awkward based on the previous pages.
This seems to have been a printing error carried over from the original Japanese manga, so you could probably blame the Square Enix publishers on this one. It wouldn't be the worst mistake they've ever made.
Anyway, after nearly getting the Yakuza treatment, Rena falls back, but still tries to get in while apologizing repeatedly.
Man, what a bitch. She thinks apologizing for trying to make a boy dinner and then having that same boy almost cut circulation to her fingers is going to solve everything. Wait.
Yeah, while it's clear that Rena is acting unusual, Cage is also acting a bit overly paranoid.
We'll discuss this more when we get to the end of this manga, but just keep that in the back of your head.
Anyway, Keiichi goes back to talking to Oishi and learn more about Rena and her past. For starters, her actual name was Reina. Yeah, for whatever reason, she dropped the I in the middle of her name.
I think I know my own name.
You think you know your own name? How stupid are you?
Secondly, breaking school windows wasn't even the worst misdemeanor she had committed. She also violently assaulted a group of boys with a metal bat.
Okay, seriously, why is it with kids and metal bats these days? I mean, come on. Whatever happened to bludgeoning people to death with plain old wood? It's such a lost art.
But yeah, up until those incidents, Rena was supposedly a model student, but some kind of violent incident had triggered a radical shift in her personality. It seemed like something had possessed her and even forced her to move back to Hinamizawa. At this point, even Oishi was starting to get cold feet and believed that maybe Oyashiro-sama's curse was real. Wanting to clear his head, Keiichi took a look outside, only to see Rena still out there apologizing in the rain.
Oh, I don't like this version of Singing in the Rain. I almost prefer the one in Garden of the Sinners.
I'm singing the rain, just singing the rain.
Almost.
The next day at school, Keiichi obviously didn't interact with Rena, especially after he almost crushed her fingers and everything, but was still approached by Mion. She tries to get Keiichi to drop the bat before he destroys any more innocent shoe cabinets, but considering he's in full tinfoil hat mode at this point, Keiichi isn't feeling all that cooperative. He even ends up yelling at Mion when she says the whole Ohagi incident was meant to be a prank. Keiichi doesn't see it that way and even points out that putting a sewing needle in wasn't something innocent like, say, Tabasco.
And I'm just gonna save that panel for future use. See you in a later story arc.
Hurt by Keiichi's words, Mion quietly whispers her desire to kill Oishi.
Hey, go easy on him, Mion. I mean, no one ever tries to hurt the guy who's just 2 days away from retirement.
After school, Keiichi slowly makes his way home while listening to the chirps of the cicadas. However, the chirps then suddenly stop, and as is so dictated in the lazy horror cliches rulebook, that means it's about time for a jump scare. Still, our hero is ready for anything, whether it be demons, evil spirits, or Rena with a huge-ass machete and murder in her eyes.
You know what, maybe talking things out wouldn't be such a bad idea.
In fact, Rena claims that she only busted out that day to help look for more Colonel Sanders statues. Okay then, maybe she is a good girl and not bonkers and is just doing that really good Crooked Man impersonation for fun.
You know something, folks? This is the scariest part of the picture.
Well said, Bugs. But yeah, this is a really well done scene as far as pure horror is concerned. Obviously, the great art in Rena's facial expressions stand out, but what really sells it are Rena's cold robotic words about how she regretted not being able to prevent Satoshi's transfer, and how the culprit behind the disappearance was a deity.
ケイチ君は勘違いしてるよ。人間の犯人なんかいない。すべてはお社様が決めることだもの。
When you juxtapose these crazy lines against the fact that a stereotypically moe anime girl is saying them with a very cutesy accent, makes it that much more unsettling. Anyway, with one good push, Keiichi manages to make some distance between him and Rena. However, he then runs into a couple of random guys who give him one hell of a punch to the gut.
Come on, guys. Just because you didn't have 8 dates for Valentine's this year doesn't mean you should be so overly protective of your waifus.
We then cut to Keiichi in his room, with Rena looking over him, though thankfully not acting like she's possessed by the spirit of Jason Voorhees anymore. Bion's also there and asks if the director is coming.
Oh no, is Ed Harris gonna come out and reveal this whole thing was a big reality show about Keiichi's life?
No, apparently the kind of director they were referring to was more along the lines of a boss of a construction crew. As in the crew who were building the dam is what Keiichi thinks, but that director was dead, so who are they referring to? Well, Keiichi doesn't have time to think it over as Rhea grabs him from behind and Mion busts out a syringe.
It's about time for your death injection! You just made that up, didn't you?
She says they're going to play a little penalty game, the same game they played with Tomitake.
ケイチ君、とぼけてるね。うすうすは気づいてたくせに。
警察は富武さんの遺体から薬物は検出できなかったって言ったぞ。
観念してって。
やめろやめろ
After a brief blackout represented by a couple of black pages,
So much wasted ink.
Keiichi wakes up and realizes it was all a dream.
What a twist!
Well, okay, so that ending was a little bit of a cop-out, but this was still a really good monk. Alright, as if they would end it like that. In all seriousness though, the following pages are what that little disclaimer at the beginning of the video we're building up towards. I won't show all of it for those especially squeamish, but I do have to show something, so just brace yourselves and don't say I didn't warn you. Either that or just skip ahead here.
Keiichi wakes up to the grisly reality in front of him, the lifeless bodies of his two former friends lying in front of him and a bloody bat in his hand. With his own two hands, Keiichi Maibara had killed the friends who had brought so much joy into his mundane life. He cried many tears that night as the cries of the cicadas died out.
And to make matters worse, the supposed director the girls mentioned arrived in the very same car that almost ran him over. With little time to spare, he decided to add to the message he had hidden behind the clock and also attach the syringe as evidence. And after saying some final farewells to his friends, Keiichi departs on a new journey to expose the mastermind behind all of this. Alright, for real this time, this is getting me excited for the next volume.
And he hears footsteps.
Damn it all.
After getting to a payphone, Keiichi gives Oishi a call to report his findings. He claims at that very moment, Oyashiro-sama was standing right behind him. However, as he's telling Oishi all this, Keiichi starts coughing violently. He had somehow contracted the same condition as Tomitake and was clawing at his own throat to the point he was bleeding profusely before passing out. The next day, the bodies of our three main characters and later the letter Keiichi had left behind were found. However, the syringe and part of the message that had mentioned it were mysteriously missing. And with that, our story arc closes with Rika comforting Sadako over the loss of their friends, but Rika cryptically mentions that they'll see them again soon enough.
これを読んだあなた、どうか真相を暴いてください。それだけが私の望みです。前原圭一。
This first story arc really helped to establish a unique and intriguing little tone for the series. It essentially went from a generic slice of life to a full-on suspense thriller, and while that ended up making the first volume a bit of a slow start, in the long run I think it really heightened the dramatic impact. After all, the whole idea behind those slice of life moments is to make us want to go back to those carefree days.
We enjoy seeing these characters work off one another and did want to see them go down such a dark path. And yet, in spite of such a dramatic shift in tone, it didn't feel out of place.
It laid the seeds of doubt early on, which then bloomed into some really suspenseful moments, helped by some fantastic artwork. As I said, Karin Suzuragi isn't my favorite Higurashi artist, but I also can't deny her ability at generating genuine suspense through her work. And as I pointed out, the scene with Rena and her machete was masterfully laid out and drawn, along with other scenes like the door scene, out of order pages aside. There, you could just feel the raw emotions coming off the pages, from Keiichi's fear to the pain in Rena's voice as he was crushing her poor fingers. Yeah, interestingly, even though we are seeing the story from Keiichi's perspective and therefore defaulting on siding with him and everything, there was a sense that he was kind of going overboard with his paranoia, bringing into question how much he was truly in the right in the end. These questions and more will be answered in due time.
I'll get back into Higurashi in the very near future, but for right now I have to start prepping for some other videos. Still, I hope you guys are enjoying these reviews featuring cute anime girls wielding giant machetes. And until next time, farewell for now, my friends.